Hello, my name is Anna Lebedieva. Yeah, majoring in graphic design, and today I will mostly focusing on typography, on the Ukrainian typography and evolution of font design. And
Hi, my name is Ren, also Ukrainian. I'm a graduate from time-based design in Minerva. And today I'm mostly talking about the visual aspect of graphic design in Ukraine. So posters, cover arts, that type of things. Yes. Okay.
and I would love to start from giving a short introduction to history of Cyrillic fonts to be more inclusive. So it's was originally invented by two brothers from Bulgaria, Kirill and Methody, and in 9th century, and it was mostly used for the church. It's called glagolic. You can see it on the right, on the left. It's one of the oldest known Slavic alphabet. It came originally from Greek alphabet. So you can see some of the letters are matching. And in the 19th century, due to change of tools, information, and speed writings, the new type of fonts started appearing. So it's like initial script, half initial script, and scroll, also known as script. Um,
Scaropus is like speed writing, I think, right? So this is kind of like making notes in our modern day,
yes,
from what I
and
remember.
also the important fact is that due to the different region where they used Scoropus, for example, on the side of the screen, you can see it's from Russian region, so it's like um, Arabic influenced. It's more curly, and those two examples are from Ukrainian official documents. And then it's 19th century, one of the most influential periods for Cyrillic that has ever been. So there's Peter the Great, the empire, the head of the Russian Empire, and he used to travel a lot, and then he traveled to the Western Europe, and decided to bring Russia closely to the Western idea, and then he made the reform that would change Cyrillic completely. And on the right side, you can see the modern Cyrillic. And then on the left, that was his invention. So it's in the 18th century. One of the main reasons why he did this, because he brought a lot of presses from Europe, especially from the Netherlands also. And so they tried to adapt those letters to print. And on the left side is also first publication printed in Ukraine by Ivan Fedorov.
Yes.
And Ren can add a few more.
Yeah, this was more connected to the Greek Catholic Church, because that was one of the main institutions that really endorsed printing books in Ukraine, that allowed for that. So a lot of the first printed books and texts in Ukraine were scriptures or otherwise religious texts. So this is an think it's called Apostle or Apostolarium, which is apostolus, so one of God's representatives, I guess. And this is more late. It's 19th century, early 19th century, and it's a Ukrainian book by Ukrainian author. So you can already see the difference, between the fonts and the design. So there is some progression involved here. But still 19th century is still pretty, I think, developmental stage for Ukrainian printing and design. So important to mention. Yes.
And 1970, 1921st, it's the most significant period of development Ukrainian culture, and also Ukraine as a country. So we separated from Russian Empire, and there is a map. You can see it. It's changed a lot now, but and because of this, Ukraine started making own banknotes, stamps, and even here you can see those were Russian stamps, and then they stamped on with like a stamp of the coat of army. So they reused material, just covered with their signature. Those two examples are made by almost like a base graphic designers who are Narbut and Krichevsky. They were mostly working in the beginning of the 20th century. You can see how they used font here. So there is no more this fenced-like font as Peter I, the Great, invented. So it's more curly, asymmetric. Also, you can see the use of Latin glyphs, and then Greek glyphs as a third letter. Yeah, so it's like a sigma, but reflected. So it's from the Greek alphabet. And based on this development and researches, even now, designers of now time uses this font. This is like this invention.
Another significant thing to say about Ukrainian graphic design in 20th century is how really double-sided it was. So there was a lot of influence that it's kind of known for from Soviet side, but also what is typically gone unnoticed is the influence that Ukrainian design had on Western design, and also vice versa. So for example, here you can see the cover of New Yorker, which was done by a Ukrainian designer. And another thing is it's really hard to identify a lot of the works because a lot of them are mislabeled as Russian or not labeled at all. So it's very complex work to do this research due to these factors. But it's really interesting what you can find. And also, again, you can see the glyph that Anna just mentioned. So a lot of influence also from other alphabetics. And here you can see, different motifs from avant-garde movement that was also prevalent in Europe. That's a book cover.
Constructivism.
Yeah, constructivism was also a big thing, like in these scenography pieces. Constructivism, social realism, but at the same time avant-garde and more kind of protest movements in art. So not just plain Soviet realism.
Yeah, however, this period did not last long. Sorry, there's more examples.
Yeah, and another important part of it was, yes, the avant-garde movement and in general the zine movement of Ukraine. Here you can see some really important zines for the avant-garde of the time, and all of the editors of the zines were also artists themselves, also members of the avant-garde community, poets. For example, in the Nova Generacija, so new generation, there were also architecture works represented. It took a lot of inspiration from the Bauhaus movement in Germany and reflected on it in its essence, I think. So this was a method of protest against also repressions, because at the time there were a lot of Soviet repressions against avant-garde artists, as it was considered the wrong type of art and didn't have a purpose or a function according to the government. However, these zines and publications were a way to, document and also promote these artists to continue their work and share their message. So it's really valuable pieces of history.
And yeah, continuing as I said before, this periods of independency didn't last long. So the Soviets occupied forcibly Ukraine, and then early Soviet era, we still can see how gradually it changed. So on the top, we still see this use of sigma letters from a Greek alphabet, and then how it's gradually changing to those pens, not flexible in a way, symmetrical letters.
Another thing to me when I was researching this topic was the fact that surprisingly, still all of these posters stayed in Ukrainian, which is very unusual because during that time Russian was pretty much represented as the only language that was valid, and all of the other languages in the Soviet Union were being attemptfully erased or made fun of, etc. They were like lower languages, lower nations, and
They even excluded the letter, one of the letter from Ukrainian alphabet, the letter "eh." They excluded it, and then only in 1992
Ukraine took it back after becoming independent again. But the main thing that we can also see during the Soviet period is the fact that there is kind of two sides of the coin, it seems. So on left or the right over here, you can see posters supporting Soviet views. But also an interesting thing is a lot of pro-Soviet posters, especially during early days of Soviet Union, were done by famous avant-garde artists from Ukraine. So that's something that you wouldn't expect typically of propaganda posters, but it's a fact that a lot of seemingly opposite from that view artists saw that it could be potential for Ukraine to become more powerful or believe the promises of independence, existing as a republic, which was obviously not true, but at the time, this is what it resulted in. And on this side, we can see graphic design that is still in tune with Ukrainian tradition. So we can see elements of Ukrainian embroidery over here on the red and white color. Also, on the far left, you can see a character from very famous. It's like sort of a humorous version of Aeneid of Homer. So the very famous ancient Greek yeah piece. But it's a Ukrainianized version of it, done in a very humorous way. And this character over here is a Cossack. So it's a ancient, not very ancient, but a Ukrainian warrior type of character, which we had a lot of throughout all of the histories. Some of them are still existent even today. And here you can see a cigarette pack with a Ukrainian woman in a classical attire, but also done in this sort of more avant-garde / cubist style, which is very interesting to see how it stains the color palettes and the reminiscent design of the original Ukrainian kind of pattern. So yeah. And another thing that was in my research about posters that I never really thought about was the role of the woman in Soviet posters that's really kind of intercepted with the social situation when it came to women and feminism and in general like the gender question of gender equality. It really changed for women in the beginning of 20th century, especially when the communism just started, because the role of the woman was suddenly shifted from being very submissive and, you know, like family oriented, just family oriented, nothing much more than that, to being a leader. And being a leader of movements, leading and propagating people into, you know, the new future for everyone. So you can see here also the way they're portrayed, even like stature wise. They're not sexualized or, you know, portrayed very frail, shaped on purpose to signify weakness. They're actually very well built, strong looking women who are like always represented in sort of action. So you can see them actively doing something, you know, like this woman carrying a bunch of wheat, or over here, this woman being this one with the Stalin in the background says, our woman is an active member of like social political life. So she's represented as someone who has a voice, has a, yeah, and a right to say something, I guess. And over here also a lot of views about just in general, like the role of woman and family shifted, because over here this poster is propagating against getting married too fast and getting married blindly, as it says here, or, you know, having children too fast or too young. So basically the focus was more on a woman as a person in a professional field, educational field, but not really just as a baby machine, which was cool. However, sadly, even though it seems very bright right now, the Soviet reality of the time, because women equality is great, that's great. However, what came after was truly devastating, because firstly came the forced industrialization, which basically meant that Stalin and the communist government wanted to produce, let's say, 200% over what they were supposed to produce. So they're supposed to produce 100, but they want 200. It was like a race for more produce. They wanted to outrun the West. They wanted to show their strength. They wanted to show all of the records can be beat. However, that was not really possible because the people resources weren't really there, you know, for that. So it led to Holodomor eventually, which was a starvation genocide from 31 till 32, in which millions of people died, resorted to cannibalism. And these posters over here are from actually insurgent Ukrainian army UPA, and they were the ones who really stood up against communist regime and were heavily prosecuted. A lot of them were killed. And here in these posters, you can see them advocating for independent Ukraine, so against the regime. And yes, they were the underground movement that really kind of used graphic design, I guess, as a tool to action.
And we kind of need to wrap up. So the post-Soviet era brought freedom in some views, but then you can see how the typography changed completely, became bland and copying just a Soviet Union kind of style. one of the most problematic thing that is even happening now, it's that Ukrainian designers, they're just copying the Latin fonts and implementing a few glyphs to create Ukrainian, but it's not really reflecting the uniqueness and quality of Ukrainian font as we saw it in the 20s. So it's you can add impact on a Western media.
Just gonna quickly run through that one so that people can look at it. I know. But these are just some book covers also as examples of what was going on, kind of. So you can see, as Anna said, more.
And yeah,
freedom.
the problem that we also faced was there's no archives after the 90s. So no depiction of posters or graphic for some reason.
And this is pretty much what you can see. How basically we start from here. In the beginning, it's Ukrainian film posters, and in the end, it's the result of a long chain in which it impacted the Western and very famous examples that we all recognize, from meme culture to Avengers posters. So very interesting impact, so to say.
Yeah, and additionally, also a lot of people immigrated, so the shift happened. So design is kind of disappeared in Ukraine. However, now we are back to our roots. You can see this as a example of this year posters, and you see the ornaments again, the folklore motifs, the use of asymmetrical types, again the N, the Latin fonts.
And also another thing, though, is that contrary to popular belief, we do have very diverse graphic design now, even though it's kind of hard to put together. But I found a lot of interesting examples, from movie posters to rave event posters as well over here. So there is quite a lot of directions in which Ukrainian designers go in the recent years. So I think there is a lot of interesting developments to expect. And here's also some of examples of more traditional pattern-based design from this year, from the war period.
Yeah, and that's, I will just, here you can also see this, like it's Europe centered in a way, influenced by Western design, and this one is more recent one, and it's definitely feeling this Ukrainian-ness kind of style.
Yeah, I think it's bringing out definitely a new niche, and I think it's nice that it brings more interest in kind of going back and creating something of our own in a modern way. That is it. Thank you very much.